Thank you. Thank you very much. So I was saying that I will maybe present very quickly this program, the agenda. So the expert talk session today will run for 1 hour and 30 minutes. We will begin with the opening remarks from distinguished representatives of AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, and the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. We will then move to the head of today's session, where two keynote speakers from the AfCFTA Secretariat will engage participants on the concrete opportunities that AfCFTA presents for SMEs operating in the agribusiness sector. The insightful will be really focused on the practical pathway for expanding market access, strengthening value chain, and enhancing competitiveness across borders. It will be followed by the interactive Q&A and discussion segment, where participants will have the opportunity to engage directly with our keynote speakers. And finally, the session will be concluded with closing remarks from ACBF and also from ABF. Thank you. Thank you very much. So allow me today's discussion will focus on a transformative opportunity for African capacity build, African agribusiness, the AfCFTA, and what is mean for SMEs operating with agricultural value chain. We are aware that MSMEs are the backbone of Africa's agricultural economy. AfCFTA today presents a great change to scale intra-African trade, strengthen the value addition, and also enhance competitiveness. Our goal today is to understand how small and medium agribusiness can strategically leverage the continental framework. So without further ado, let's move on the opening remarks segment. And today we are really honored to have distinguished institutional leaders with us, whose representatives will frame context that supports SMEs participation under AfCFTA. For their remarks, please allow me to first give the floor to Dr. Chotechi Makong, the Director of Cooperation and Programs at the AfCFTA Secretariat, to share his remarks. Dr. Makong, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Odelia. And first, let me thank the organizers for inviting the AfCFTA Secretariat to be part of this very important and great initiative. And of course, I'm not speaking on my own behalf. I'm speaking on behalf of the Secretary General of the AfCFTA Secretariat. And with this, then let me, of course, observe all the protocols and greet everybody who has made this particular event possible. And we really appreciate the invitation once again. I would like to start probably not on such a good tone, and probably what I'm going to say is something that all of us are aware of. Maybe just to start off by saying that we all know that in terms of the numbers, the statistics, the micro, small and medium enterprise in the continent, they constitute about 95% of all African businesses, particularly in the sub-Saharan Africa. And that's a very staggering number. And of course, what this means is that when we talk about trade in the African continent, we are actually talking about trade being done by the small and medium enterprises, given the high number in terms of the percentage of their contribution in terms of business in Africa. The second issue that I would want to highlight is that the small and medium enterprises, they contribute around 40% of GDP. And also over 60% of the workforce in the continent, and this is it's a determination made by the African Development Bank. So again, it means if you talk of employment, the small and medium enterprises basically constitute the biggest share of contributor to the employment across the continent, and of course, 40% of GDP is quite high. This is to say the SMEs and micro and small and medium enterprises are extremely important, and they are the backbone, and structurally they form what the African economy really represents, and that's a very important point. That said, and this is where probably the sad reality of or what most of us probably would have heard, is that one, the very same micro, small, and medium enterprises, they run a financing gap of around over 330 billion US dollars. And again, this is determined by International Finance Corporation. Again, huge gap. The potential is there, but the financing gap is astronomically huge. The second thing that is not so good news about the plight of the MSMEs and SMEs is that less than 20% of them, and I'm sure we have heard this, they have access to finance from banks and other financial institutions. So that is on the side of formalization. And 18% of the small and medium enterprises, only 18% of them are able to maintain a formal accounting records. And again, that means this is linked to the issue concerning access to finance, and there is a gap. If you look at the requirements of banks and financial institutions to provide access to finance to small and medium enterprises, and the ability and the structural challenges they have when it comes to keeping the accounting records. One other element, to the third one to raise, is that when you look at the MSMEs and SMEs in terms of the collateral that they face if they were to take up a loan, the requirements would range anything from 150 to 300% of the value of the loan. So again, the vast majority of them are outside of the formal banking system in terms of accessing accessing funding, but at the same time, because they need this particular funding, and of course it means they will have to pay of upwards of around 300% of the value of the loan. And clearly this is something that we need to conceptualize very well, because it means there is a business to be done, and there is demand on the part of the MSMEs and the small and medium enterprises to have access to finance, but at the same time the tools to make sure that they actually do get these services are not at least there, or at least they're not adequate. So that's a very important element to speak to. These are the challenges that the very small and medium enterprises and MSMEs face. And when we talk about the value chains, this is the side that I believe we need to make sure that it is catered for, because all investments that are being made, very important, but we need to make sure that we sort out these issues around financing. Now, at the same time, we have a number of opportunities in terms of the value chains. And here, when you look at the global markets, not just the continent, the global markets, you look at certain crops that are very key to the continent. Mangoes, they are worth about 5 billion in terms of the market opportunities globally. And you look at cocoa, we know it's all over 30 billion. So there are these particular crops in the agricultural sector that could actually, if well conceptualized in terms of identifying them, that could actually turn the plight of the small and medium enterprises and micro and small and medium enterprises into benefits. So this is very important. If, for example, you look at the blue foods, as they call them, whether it be fisheries, the aquaculture, and the production in the continent, to the global markets, it sits around 13.1 billion tons, and that's significant. Yet at the same time, it has been determined that if with an investment of around, let's say with a proper investment, we could see the blue foods industry growing to about 17 billion in terms of its contribution to the GDP across the continent, and also creating around 3.3 million jobs in the continent. So we do have all these bright spots as to what could be. And for this reason, we at the AfCFTA Secretariat, we are very proud of the achievement of our members by coming up with the legal instruments that could actually make all of these challenges into opportunities. And of course, we do have several legal instruments in the area of trading goods. Markets have been opened up for a number of these particular, or some of the products that you have in agriculture. And therefore, that means we have to conceptualize how do we ensure that we have cross-border value chains. Of course, the value chains are important within a national context, but but more could be fetched in terms of their viability if they go beyond the national border. And of course, here we also have the protocol on women and youth, in trade, really opening some huge opportunities. We also have several other protocols, including on investment. We do have the protocols on intellectual property rights, because again, the whole ecosystem of these products that the small and medium enterprises trade in, they would require a stable legal framework. They will require certainty. They will require that the intellectual property rights are protected, whether it be trademarks, and they would be able to reach out to the global markets. We also have initiatives at the Secretariat that would actually go into supporting the initiatives by the small and medium enterprises as well as the MSMEs. For example, we have the AfCFTA trading companies, where it is possible for us to have some level of aggregation, and we are able to make sure that our farmers, they can actually fetch high premium in terms of the market value of their products in all other African countries. And of course, once they master the art of exporting within the continent, the sky is the limit. They will have to have access to global markets. Not only that, we also have some initiatives that I hope my colleagues would be speaking to, in particular Masejo and colleagues, about some initiatives in the fishery sector and many other sectors. So this is to say that the legal instruments are there, the legal framework has been set out, and therefore we need to see how can we exploit this legal framework for the benefit of and medium enterprises as well as micro and small medium enterprises, while keeping in mind that all of this would be viable if we can forge value chains. I would like to end my intervention by highlighting some of the few things that we believe are quite critical as a Secretariat to move forward. This is to say that it's got to be an ecosystem approach. Ecosystem approach in the sense of fully understanding what rules apply and the interaction between those particular rules. And that's why the AfCFTA has these particular rules that interact, that do not apply one independent of the other. These are mutually inclusive and mutually independent rules, and therefore this is the approach that we think we can take in this particular sense. Now, we have about 6 key issues that must be ring-fenced, that must be part and parcel of any intervention concerning building these value chains, in particular, in this case, in the area of agriculture. One is being able to identify the value chains, the priority value chains, and of course, this has to be driven by demand. We have to be able to identify where demand is, and on the basis of the demand, we identify this particular value chains. Number 2 is market identification and market intelligence. Extremely important. Again, the question of the demand comes in here, but matchmaking will be key. It is of no use to be able to invest funding, but you don't have the buyers. So the matchmaking between the sellers and the buyers, the producers as well, very important, and therefore market identification and market intelligence will be quite key. The third area is compliance with the trade requirements, and already I've spoken at length in terms of what we have under the AfCFTA, and these rules that we have put in place, they actually smoothen trade to make sure that the level of compliance is not as stringent, and of course, facilitate trade and reduce the trade costs. And this is important, and here we are talking about the quality requirements, being able to ensure that the producers and the sellers can meet the quality requirements, whether it be packaging, whether it be labeling, all of that very important to be met. The other element, the fourth one, is strengthening the product competitiveness. The product quality themselves, very important that we ensure that the products can meet the relevant market requirements. The fifth area is to facilitate business connection, and already I've spoken about ensuring that we do have a business-to-business relationship. We do matchmaking, very important as part of this particular ecosystem. And I'll end by saying, and this is the last element, we need capacity building for cross-border trade. We have different sectors that require different levels of capacity building, and there is indeed no other way but except for providing this particular interventions in capacity building to ensure that the goods indeed do cross the border, and of course the capacity building will cut across multiple levels. So with this, I wish to end my interventions here, and thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to the very interesting session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Macon, for your remarks. Just noted that opportunities are very broader in the AfCFTA regarding the wealth creation, job creations, but also some challenges is there in terms of access to finance and also in terms of good tools for SMEs, and AfCFTA is really here to help SMEs in agribusiness to succeed. Thank you very much, Dr. Macon. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Roland Meyer, Head of Division 210 at German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, for his remark. Thank you very much. Mr. Roland Meyer, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and thank you, Dr. Macon, for these very, very good introductory points that you made, which I couldn't have done any better. I'm heading the division that deals with continental programs, so operations, continental operations in Africa, coordination of continental operations in Africa, working also with the African Union, and one of our partners is also the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I would say also a very important partner. For me, this is a little bit also to the core of business, because I have worked with the African Development Bank on agri-poles, and I've worked with IFAD on strengthening smallholders. And we have just heard that a lot of the African farmers are in small business and very small businesses, medium size. They constitute a large part of the population and contribute significantly to the African overall African GDP. So this is a very key area, and I also want to say that we are not, Germany has a from its backbone in industry, it's small and medium-sized enterprises, which may be big in size, but they are very important, and they are looking for partners. And it has always traditionally been complicated to get German companies to invest in Africa, to work with African companies, because it's very difficult to trade across borders. There are a lot of illicit and not illicit, but intransparent rules, unclear to get something across borders. The costs are sometimes very high, and the risks are not always clear to investors. So it's very challenging. It's different if you're a multinational company and can take certain risks. So it's very important that Africa has this agenda of an African Continental Free Trade Area. My chancellor at the EU Africa Summit actually emphasized that this is a project which is challenging but very much worth it, because it can actually incentivize a lot of people to invest in these actors and work with these actors if the conditions are right. And that's what you're working on, what Africa is working on, and it's very key, despite all the challenges. And we have been working in the agriculture sector, but we also have been working on trade issues at different levels. A few months ago, I was explained a project that we have, where we actually work on how can we make sure that if you export from one country to the other, that the quality assurance is not in your way of exporting to a neighboring country, which is sometimes very difficult in Africa. And I think the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Secretariat does an excellent and very challenging but very, very helpful job on this. Also, many thanks to the Agribusiness Facility for Africa project and the African Capacity Building Foundation to organize this dialogue in bringing together such a committed group. So for us, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a cornerstone of the African Union's Agenda 2063, with the goal of creating a single continental market for goods and services, which is in a sense historic. It's a market of 1.3 billion people, combined GDP of approximately 3.4 trillion US dollars. So this is an immense potential that is not being used at the moment. And if you look, Germany is as a trading country, if you like, an industrial country, has been profiting a lot from having open access to European markets, and we get significant benefits from this. And it's not a zero-sum game, some game where one country profits more than the other, but all can profit from it. And that's it can, if we look at Africa, this can significantly boost inter-African trade. It can enhance also competitiveness, because that's a key if you work across different markets. And it has been mentioned, it can create a lot of employment opportunities, which is absolutely key if you look at the young population coming up in Africa and the gap of finding employment or self-employment on the African continent, and scaling up enterprises from very small and informal to small and medium scale and formal. This is absolutely key that Africa moves on that, and we are fully behind that. Just to give you a comparison, in Europe, about 60% of our trade goes within the European Union. So we have a large share of our trade going between the European countries. Intra-African trade accounts for only about 16% of total trade. So that gives you an idea of the way or the chances and opportunities that you have before you. For my ministry, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area is a priority in our partnership with the African Union, and a more integrated and dynamic African market also contributes to more resilient supply chains, both within Africa, but also to other countries around the world, including Germany, and Europe. It contributes to stronger partnerships and to shared prosperity. And that's what we are actually trying to support through our development cooperation with initiatives like the Agribusiness facility, aiming to create an enabling environment also for private sector engagement, for fair trade relations and local value addition, and broad-based economic growth. The agriculture remains, and that has been mentioned by Dr. Macron, a backbone of many African economies, and he has mentioned the figures, also including on employment, particularly in rural areas. But at the same time, agribusiness, agri-food value chains have to gain momentum, and it's actually a key point that we can move beyond Africa exporting raw commodities to moving towards processing agricultural products locally. So creating local value addition is key, and it will create higher value new markets and additional jobs. So this, if we manage to move on this agenda, then there are significant opportunities for intra-African trade and agri-food products. Rising demand for locally processed goods, combined with reduced trade barriers and improved standards under the African Continental Free Trade Area, can support food security, industrialization, and economic diversification. And we are trying to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises integrating into regional and global markets. This includes, and this has been mentioned, and I also point to the African Capacity Building Foundation, This includes strengthening skills, and I think this has been mentioned by Dr. Makung also, that in very different areas of skills and capacity formation, there is a need. You cannot just open borders if the skills and the abilities are not there. He has mentioned for example, the accounting skills, which are absolutely key to get finance, to get your company going. So improving access and promoting digital and trade facilitation measures to reduce time and costs at borders is also very important, but we need to work also with the farmers directly and with small and medium-sized companies. On behalf of BMZ, I would like to thank the Secretariat for their African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat for the participation and our hosts for organizing this event. I hope this discussion today will help to identify concrete challenges and opportunities, and it is particularly important to keep the needs and perspectives of these medium and small enterprises at the center of our discussions, as they are key drivers of innovation, employment, and inclusive growth. Last point from my side, we work also with on the macro level with trade insurance. We work also on PIDA corridors, and this is something that we also think about. Thinking about not just how can I transport raw materials from a mine to the coast, as has been traditionally the case, but also thinking about how can small and medium-sized enterprises profit from corridors being developed that allow them to transport their goods both within the country and to other neighboring countries in a more strategic way, improving the infrastructure. This includes also working on a continental energy market, working on digitalization and other things, working on allowing these small enterprises to get better access to finance and securities. This is all important. It's a huge task, but we have a strong African players working on this, and I can just encourage you to go along that way, and I can assure you that we will support you on the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We understand that AfCFTA is of great interest to you and that you actively support it, as well as the promotion of agribusiness across the continent. Thank you very much to all our distinguished speakers for these insightful remarks. Now, let's turn to the heart of today's discussion, exploring the opportunities that AfCFTA presents for SMEs in agribusiness. So to guide us through this important conversation, I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speakers from the AfCFTA Secretariat, Ms. Wenzi Shanga Sambo and Ms. Mazengo Retabile Maika. So while the technical setup is being finalized, allow me to make a moment to introduce our two keynote speakers. Ms. Shango Samba is a senior agri-trade and food systems policy specialist with over 15 years of experience across African Union institutions and continental programs. She currently serves in the private sector unit within the Office of the Secretary General at the AfCFTA Secretariat, where she leads technical support for the implementation and operationalization of the AfCFTA Agri-Trade Action Plan. Ms. Shango Samba focused on translating AfCFTA legal and policy framework into actionable intervention for agriculture trade, advancing regional value chain, and also strengthening coordination between ministries of trade and agriculture across member states. And Ms. Shango Samba brings deep insightful into how SMEs can practically leverage AfCFTA to expand trade, enhance competitiveness, and also integrates into regional value chain. And Ms. Mazengo Retabile Maika is an analyst at the AfCFTA Secretariat also. with experience supporting the implementation of annexes on non-tariff barrier, technical barriers to trade, and sanitary and phytosanitary measurements under the AfCFTA Protocol on Trade in Goods. Prior to join AfCFTA, Ms. Retabile Maika worked as a trade advisor at GIZ Southern Africa, supporting SADC's member states in resolving anti-bids and implementing trade facilities and rules of origins. So please join us to welcome Mr. Shanga Sambo and Ms. Shanga Sambo and Ms. Retabile Maika. Ms. Shanga Sambo, if you are ready, you have the floor, please. You have 30 minutes for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor to be part of this forum today to discuss some of the areas we can be engaging with the private sector to be able to take advantage of the AfCFTA framework. If you allow me, I'm going to switch off my video because my bandwidth is a little low. Thank you. So this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, I'll be talking about the opportunities for MSMEs in agribusiness to take part and participate in the AfCFTA framework. My presentation will basically take you through 4 different sections where I'll be talking about just in general the AfCFTA, what it is about and the state of play. Then I'll be talking about the AfCFTA priority value chains. Then I'll dive deep into the agri-trade action, looking specifically at the agriculture and agro-processing value chain, which is very relevant to our discussion today. Then I'll go into the agri-trade action plan itself as the aligned activities that also offer other opportunities for implementation by the private sector. I like the saying that governments, they make decisions and policies, but the real implementers are MSMEs. So for AfCFTA to be practical and implementable, we have to work through you, with you, to have the desired impact. Okay, so in terms of the state of play of the AfCFTA, just very quickly, I think we are all aware that the AfCFTA is the world's largest free trade area, which brings together 55 countries across Africa and 8 regional economic communities. And it has also got about 1.4 billion people with a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. So even from that general overview, you can see the opportunities that we are sitting on with the AfCFTA Secretariat. The AfCFTA is basically part of the Agenda 2063. It is a flagship program of the Agenda 2063 and has got a dual mandate where we look at intra-Africa trade as well as positioning Africa's trading within the global market. I already talked about the 3.4 trillion GDP that Africa has together within the AfCFTA. Africa has got 3.4 trillion GDP. And by 2030, it is expected to double to 6.7 trillion. And then we have 54 countries that have signed on to the AfCFTA framework, and a total of $540 billion of African exports, of which, unfortunately, only 20% is traded within Africa. So, for example, if we were to trade the way Europe and Asia trades amongst themselves, where Europe is trading 66% of their trade within their own bloc, and Asia within their own bloc, would be able to triple our current GDP from trade to $260 billion. And if we are able to triple to $260 billion, we'll be able to now take out 30 million people out of poverty by providing them jobs. I just also want to quickly emphasize on the Article 27 of the AfCFTA agreement, which explicitly states the importance of MSMEs and the need to improve export capacity of both formal and informal service providers, especially also including women and youth participation in that process. Very quickly, I just want to highlight this. I won't go through it in detail. You have the presentation after this, but these are the objectives of the AfCFTA. It is to create a single continental market, to expand intra-Africa trade across regional economic communities and in the continent generally, promote and attain sustainable and inclusive development, promote industrial development through development of regional value chains, and enhance competitiveness of African economies. In terms of the general state of play, in terms of where we are with the AfCFTA, we have 55 member states that have signed the agreement of the AfCFTA. And then we've got 50 member states that have ratified the AfCFTA agreement, which basically means that they have agreed to be bound by the AfCFTA agreement. So we've got 50 countries across Africa, which is a huge milestone in terms of the achievements we've been able to make within the short time that the AfCFTA has been operational. And we've got 48 member states that have submitted their tariff concessions, which basically means the tariffs and specific practical actions they have agreed to put in place for them to be to offer preferential trade within the AfCFTA agreement have been submitted to the AU as they have ratified it at their national level. Our director, Makong, also talked about the protocols of the AfCFTA. So the past few years, we have really focused on making sure that we've got the legal framework for us to be able to trade, for countries to be able to trade within the AfCFTA framework. And so there was a huge focus on making sure that we finalize the protocols within the AfCFTA, which is protocol in trade in goods, trade in services, and dispute settlement. That was the first phase of the protocols that were put in place. And then the second phase are the protocols in competition policy, intellectual property rights, investment, digital trade, and women and youth in trade. So they're in two different phases. This was the first one on the left were the first protocols that were put in place, and the second ones are the second protocols that have now been finalized. And so now the AfCFTA is really ready to start practical implementation. We have all the legal frameworks that are in place, and now we are ready to initiate implementation within the AfCFTA. Of course, we've already started this, but we really want to hit the road running and continue implementation. And this year, our Secretary General has dubbed it the year of implementation within the AfCFTA. So we are moving away from just protocols and annexes and what have you to actual practical implementation. So this webinar today is very, very timely and strategically placed. In terms of the AfCFTA operational instruments, we have several operational instruments, and my colleague Maseko will talk about it a little bit more later in the presentation, giving some examples on how the MSMEs can really utilize some of these operational instruments for them to be able to practically take advantage of what the AfCFTA framework is offering to the private sector in Africa. So basically, we've got, I'll be very quick about it, the AfCFTA e-tariff book, the rules of origin manual, the non-tariff barrier online mechanism, the AfCFTA adjustment fund, which I'll talk about later on as well, the Pan-African payment and settlement system, and then the AfCFTA private sector database and other operational instruments. Again, Maseko will talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation. In terms of private sector engagement, what are we doing to make sure that we engage the private sector in a practical way? Because let's face it, knowledge right now of the AfCFTA to the private sector and how they can really fully utilize it is a little limited. However, we've got two platforms that are very practical and allow that engagement and for the private sector to also make deals in business to business cooperations and engagements. We have what we call the Biashara Africa, and we also have what is called the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which is the AfCFTA marketplace. The AfCFTA has prioritized some value chains, which again, our director talked about briefly, and I'll just go a little bit in depth with the value chains that we have identified. So before I go into those value chains, I just want to really highlight Article 3 of the AfCFTA agreement, which aims to promote industrial development through diversification and regional value chain development and agriculture development and food security. Because of this Article 3, we came up with a private sector strategy on how we can engage the private sector, but also which value chains we can really focus on to have some impact within a 5-year period as initial focus areas of our value chain development in the continent. And so we did a study together with McKinsey through Mastercard Foundation. We did a study that identified that looked through the different value chains within Africa and which ones we can really focus on. We came up with various criteria that we looked at in engaging with value chain for us to focus on. And so we looked at, first we filtered on based on the value of trade. So we looked at the value of trade in terms of high potential value, which value chains have got geographical balance. Is it only being produced, for example, let's say the value chain is only really effective in North Africa. We're not really looking for that, but we're looking for value chains that can be implementable across Africa. And then we also looked at feasibility in terms of ability to overcome barriers to trade and production within a short time frame, as I said, a 5-year time frame initially. And then we also look at the contribution of those value chains to the national GDPs. So how are they contributing to sustainable GDP growth? And then also their contribution to creating employment. We all know that majority of our population in Africa, we've got a very young continent. So we're very interested to see how these value chains can contribute to job employment for those young people. And then we also looked at product complexity in terms of can we add value to these value chains and how jobs can be created through manufacturing locally. We also looked at inclusivity. I talked about the youth, the MSMEs and women. Those are the areas of inclusivity we looked at, and of course, environmental sustainability. I won't talk too much to this slide, but it just shows the analysis, the results of the analysis. And as you can see over there, we identified 4 value chains. So it's agriculture and agro-processing, automotive and vehicle parts, pharmaceuticals, transport, logistics, and distribution. And from that analysis, you can see that agriculture was the value chain, agriculture and agro-processing was the value chain that would add the most value if we invest in these value chains in terms of value to trade, feasibility, economic growth, and inclusivity. So just a quick view of our 4 priority value chains of the AfCFTA. So let's be honest. I think we all know this, and we are all from the agriculture constituency. From the title of our talk today, agriculture is really the backbone of our economy in Africa. We all know this. And from the analysis that we did, we've also seen how agriculture has the ability to have the most impact in terms of if we invest in that value chain. Also, most Africans, when it comes to trade, they are trading in agricultural goods and products. So food, unfortunately, is the major driver of the trade deficit in Africa, with 61 billion continental food import bill and 12 billion continental trade deficit that is driven by food. And 30%, unfortunately, of cereal consumption is made through imports. On the other hand, on the flip side, agriculture provides jobs for women, SMEs in agriculture, especially for those marginalized groups. So it employs about 50% of Africans, and 70% of informal traders are women, youth, and informal traders. So agriculture really is a priority and can have huge impact in Africa if we invest in this value chain. Just a quick analysis that we did in terms of now when we're talking about agriculture, which value chains are we going to focus on in those 5 years? And you can just see a quick snapshot of some of those value chains that we did. We looked at share of Africa's total inputs, and then we also looked at share of Africa's total exports. Just to have that slide, you can go through it later on once we share the presentation. So based on the private sector strategy and the identification of agriculture as a major focus area, as a key priority value chain for the AfCFTA for us to have the most impact on, we came up with the Agri-Trade Action Plan, because we didn't want just the strategy to be at that top layer of saying now we have a strategy, but then what? We want to implement. And so we came up with a practical, what we call the Agri-Trade Action Plan, the AfCFTA Agri-Trade Action Plan. Now, this action plan has identified key value chains, going even deeper with the analysis in terms of looking at the different opportunities that present themselves in terms of who are the top producers of various value chains within Africa, and who are the top importers of various value chains, agricultural value chains, and then also the top exporters, and also highlighted top bilateral opportunities, then matching those different producers versus exporters, and those who can supply enough agricultural produce for us to trade, really making those matches and along the value chains within agricultural within the corridors of Africa. So basically, the Agri-Trade Action Plan came up with various criteria as well. We didn't just wake up and think, okay, let's prioritize these 9 value chains, but we looked at the economic potential for the value chains with strong potential for job creation and significant contribution to African economies. And we also looked at trade potential in terms of commodities with opportunities to increase intra-African trade, particularly through import substitution, stronger regional demand, and value addition. We also looked at the impact potential. So value chains that contribute to broader development objectives such as food security, nutrition value, climate resilience, and inclusivity. And then we also looked at the strategic importance and alignment with national and regional priorities, as well as the geographic relevance of the value chain across multiple African countries. So with that criteria that we came up with, we have identified 9 value chains, which is maize value chain. And you can see there, we've identified South Africa and Zimbabwe as to be trading amongst each other in those areas. So from the deep analysis, we can share the Agri-Trade Action Plan, which is available. You will see that the deep analysis shows that Zimbabwe is able to produce enough maize for them to export to South Africa, which usually has got a maize deficit, etc. So this is just not based on, it's based on a lot of analysis and a lot of consultations. In December, we recently concluded a technical consultation between Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Agriculture technical experts who also validated this analysis. So we looked at the 9 value chains: maize, rice, soya, fruits and vegetables, palm oil, meat, fish and its products, cashew and cotton. Just in summary, because this is a 30-minute presentation, I can't really go through. The action plan itself is 300 and something pages, but I've tried to summarize it in 1 slide. So basically, when we look at one of the value chains, let's take maize. So in the analysis, we did a deep dive into maize, and then we looked at the opportunities surrounding maize, the demands for maize, and then the import substitution that maize could have from what we're importing externally outside of Africa. And then we looked at the challenges for us to be able to trade within those matched up countries that I talked about, and also even externally, not just between those countries, but across Africa. And with maize, for example, the top barrier maize, you see there, it means it's very binding constraint. And the lighter the color goes, it's not a relevant barrier. So for maize, insufficient border procedures was a major barrier. Whereas for soya, this is not a challenge at all. And then for, let's pick something else, for fish value chain, you see that tariffs are a major constraint for countries to be able to trade in this value chain. So you can have this slide, and again, on request, we can also share the full agri-trade action plan. So you can see there how we've identified the barriers, the gaps, and what we plan to do is to now work with countries that are identified in this agri-trade action plan, which we plan to implement within 2 years, by the way. So these are initial value chains that we want to focus on. But we are not saying these are the only value chains that we'll be working on. No. What we plan to do is to really now take that analysis and identification of gaps and go into countries and engage the government, engage the private sector, show them the opportunities that exist, and then see the areas based on their requests that would require us to work with the countries, of course, also mobilizing resources to enable the small and medium enterprises for them to be able to access resources to overcome these barriers and increase trade in those value chains. I just want to also highlight the other agri-trade action plan aligned initiatives. And Director Makong also talked about this briefly, and Maseho, I'll invite her to also talk about this after the end of my input. We've got some activities that we are working on that are already aligned to the Agri-Trade Action Plan. So the Agri-Trade Action Plan has gone through various consultations, but it is at the very end of being finally endorsed for implementation. So while it is still being in that process, we've already started implementing some activities that are very much aligned within the Agri-Trade Action Plan that we identified in the private sector strategy. So one of them is the Women and Youth Economic Empowerment in Fisheries through Inclusive Market Access Program. So it's a program that we are implementing together with Trademark Africa with the support of Mastercard Foundation. And this program basically aims to catalyze inclusive market and employment opportunities in the fisheries value chain, particularly for women and youth. The program focuses on improving market access, strengthening value addition, and increasing intra-Africa trade in fish products across key regional corridors. The target countries in terms of geographic region and coverage listed there: Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, including Zanzibar, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, Nigeria, and selected island states. So within a central objective is to really equip women and youth with skills, business support, and market linkages to support more effective regional fisheries trade. And through these interventions, the program really, at the end of the program, we are looking to create 242,573 jobs and 150,000 self-employment from these jobs, and 92,573 wage jobs created. So both formal employment as well as informal employment, where one creates a job for themselves for self-employment. We are also looking to increase trade in fish and fish products by $100 million by the end of this project. And then 30,000 women and youth should be equipped with skills to trade in fish and fish products, and 10,000 jobs should be created and sustained. So not only creating those 242,573, but we want to see at least minimum 10,000 of those jobs sustained beyond the project period. And then we also want to see an increase in revenue of up to $2 million in fish and fish products. Another initiative worth mentioning is what we call the Common Africa Agro Park program, which supports the development of transboundary agro-industrial parks that connect production, processing, and market access within regional value chains. It helps transform agricultural products closer to where they are produced, strengthening linkages between farmers, processors, and regional markets while creating jobs and increasing intra-Africa trade. So this program is really being implemented with the AfCFTA Secretariat, the African Union Commission, as well as the Forum for Agriculture Research in Africa. There are two agro-parks that we have focused on initially. We are focusing on initially, still under development. It is the Cocoa Cup, which is between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And then we also have the Zimbabwe and Zambia Common Agro Park, really focusing on grains and within that region. Other investment opportunities include what we are calling business cases. So we have developed business cases so that we have ready bankable businesses that the private sector can have a look at, not only the private sector, but even funding institutions, if they are willing to or interested to fund activities immediately within the Agri-Trade Action Plan. We have come up with business cases, two of which are finalized, but we are creating other business cases for all the value chains, priority value chains that I talked about. So the business cases look at opportunities to boost value addition and intra-Africa trade by processing agricultural commodities within Africa. So that value addition that Director Makong talked about. So instead of exporting raw materials, how are we adding value? How are we securing that additional income by adding value to African products? And then we've got two key business cases. One looks at the potential for West Africa to process cotton into yarn for regional textile markets. The other one looks at development of agro-processing hubs across multiple value chains to drive industrialization, job creation, and increase intra-Africa trade. Director Makong also really emphasized on the need to finance MSMEs and the lack of MSMEs to access funding for them to be able to take advantage of the AfCFTA. So in terms of, we have tried to address this, and this was really a call from our senior trade officials within the AfCFTA policy organ mechanism. The called for us not to just have an agri-trade action plan, but to also explore ways in which we can support these SMEs to access finance for them to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. So I'm sure you've heard of the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund, which supports African countries and businesses to adjust to new trade environment created by the AfCFTA. This is really a huge fund, which I don't want to get into, but mostly targeting governments, and it is too big for SMEs to be able to tap into the adjustment fund. So what we are looking at and what we are trying to come up with is what we are calling the AfCFTA Impact Investment Initiative, which now has a specific target and tries to target that missing middle, whereby financing is usually available for microfinancing or very big financing, for example, the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund. But then there's that missing middle. Most of the MSMEs fall within this missing middle, and we really want to create a financing mechanism that they can tap into to support their trade and adding value for trade within Africa. The target is to inject about 500 million impact fund to catalyze SMEs in the AfCFTA value chain. And it is really targeting people who want to access anything above $5,000 to $50,000 for implementation. And then in terms of governance, it will have AfCFTA's strategic oversight. It will have independent professional fund managers and private sector-led steering committee. Implementation, it will be a continental umbrella fund, not just on agribusiness, but looking at all the value chains, the priority value chains that I earlier about. In terms of messages, and create policy, as I said from the beginning of my presentation, but the real people that implement are the private sector, who are very critical in this process. ANTI is creating a second continental market, opening new opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities that we can take advantage of. And agriculture is central to Africa's economic transformation, and there are a lot of opportunities within that agriculture value chain that we can also tap into. The Agri-Trade Action Plan focuses on priority value chains with greatest potential to increase regional trade and value addition, but it doesn't mean we are only working within these value chains. We also support state parties and member states who need support in really addressing other value chains where they see potential. Addressing practical trade barriers is critical, including border procedures, standard harmonization, etc. Inclusive participation is essential, ensuring that women, youth, MSMEs benefit from the activity, particularly in AfCFTA-enabled trade opportunities, as well as access to financing is very critical. With that, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Masego to also give us additional information. Masego, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Wesley. Can you kindly confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
And see me. Thank you very much for your presentation, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And as my colleague has just presented the more presentation on what we're doing, what I will do is to show you a demonstration on some of our useful operational tools. And the reason why these operational tools have been really developed is to answer the question that, okay, fine, we know what the AfCFTA does, but as a business person, what are the practical instruments, what are the practical tools that you have developed that could enable me to access the secretariat? I'll give an example. There are a lot of challenges that as business persons you experience. You're at the border, you're experiencing a challenge. How then do you bring it to our attention to say, there's this issue, can you kindly help me? So we have a mechanism for that. It's called the Continental NTB online reporting mechanism. So I'll show you how to use the platform. And then we also have the e-tariff book. So the e-tariff book really is a platform that has been created for business people to check the origins of the products that they're trading. I'll give an example also. You're in South Africa, you intend to trade with a country with Egypt, with a company in Egypt, and you want to check before you start any trade, any negotiations, any spending really. You want to check if really that product qualifies to be traded under the AfCFTA to that particular country, and you want to check issues around duties applicable and so there's a platform for that. So I will just quickly, to allow more time for engagements, just show you how both instruments work, and then we'll come back for the questions and answers. So let me just quickly do this. So to access the online mechanism, it's tradebarriers.africa. So this is a platform that has been created to assist. Kindly confirm if you see it. A thumbs up.
Yes, Masego.
Okay, and you can hear me perfectly?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is, let me go to the homepage. So to access the online mechanism, you go to tradebarriers.africa. So you get on your laptop, and then tradebarriers.africa is the URL. So it will bring you to this homepage where it will provide you information on what an NTB is. If you're not too sure whether your challenge qualifies as a non-tariff barrier, so it will bring you to this platform, where when you click under the homepage, this is the homepage, and it shows you different ways of bringing your NTBs to us. You can report on the website. There's a mobile app, or you can directly do that through the national focal points. Perfect. So you get here, and then now you want to register a complaint. You come to register a complaint. This is where now you'll be required to log in to create an account. And once you've created that account, you scroll down. Which country are you in? You are in Botswana. You click company in Botswana, and then here you provide the details of the occurrence. So what's the issue that has been experienced? Where did it happen? So if you scroll down here, it will give you click the country of origin on where that issue occurred, and where exactly, like the description. Was it at the airport? Was it at the border post? Was it within a government institution? Was it a roadblock issue? You provide. If here you're not, all these provided options do not fit to what the NTB you experience was, you can specify the location here. And then now this is what we deem the most important aspect of it all, is where now you describe the details of the NTB. Everything here goes. When did it happen? What type of NTB was it? And you provide the full description of the incident. If you have documents, you can attach the documents. We detail the product and also the product value. The whole idea really here is to give as much information as you can to enable the AfCFTA NTB coordination unit to really help you in the resolution process. So now, after you've submitted and you're satisfied with the issue that you've experienced, then you click send, and then the minute you send the NTB, the minute it notifies you that an issue has been registered on our platform, it also notifies the AfCFTA NTB coordination unit immediately. It's almost instant to say, okay, company X is experiencing this issue. As the NTB coordination unit of the AfCFTA Secretariat, we will open and then see the issue that has been experienced. We do what we call a diagnostic assessment of the NTB. This is really to satisfy ourselves, or to provide more information to the NCU that, okay, indeed, this is an NTB. It falls under category 1, 2, 3, and therefore we need to kickstart the resolution process. So that different types of NTBs that could be registered on the platform. You're not sure if it's a company in Botswana experiencing a challenge with a company in South Africa, and you bring it to this continental platform. When doing our assessment, we see that this is a intra-rec NTB. It resolved at the SADC level. That the system allows for us to transfer the system to the NTB to the SADC, the tripartite online mechanism. If it's a West African, we transfer it to the ECOWAS NTB platform. If it's an East African involving countries in the East Africa, there's the tripartite mechanism for that. So let's assume it's an NTB that falls within the continental platform between a country in East, a country in North Africa. It comes here, and it's been determined that by the NCU that it's an NTB. So the minute we accept it on the system that indeed this is an NTB between Egypt and South Africa, for example, it notifies, I'll come here to the contacts. It also notifies what we call the national focal points. So every country has a national focal point. This is a government representative, or in most cases, a business sector representative, who has been nominated to deal specifically on issues or matters arising as NTBs. If it's Botswana, if you're not too sure who the national focal point is. When you come to this point where it provides all national focal points, then it gives you the information to say, okay, for Botswana, these are the national focal points. For Chad, these are the national focal points. So once an NTB is accepted on the system, it goes to the national focal points. So the national focal points of both countries are aware that an issue has been raised, and it therefore needs to be resolved and resolved very quickly. Then from there, it's the AfCFTA and the countries involved and the company to convene its first meeting. The purpose of this first meeting, now I'm quickly going through the resolution process, is to put its a fact-finding mission. Now this is the company to come and present the case, to say this is the case, experience between country X and Y, and all the relevant stakeholders. If it's a customs issue, the customs departments will be invited in addition to the national focal points. And this is where really the issue will be discussed very extensively. And in most cases, depending on what the circumstances of the issue are, the NTB is resolved in at that level. However, there are instances where even after an NTB, after a lot of discussions, an NTB is not resolved, then we move to where now an NTB is not resolved. But so far, all the NTBs that we have which have been registered on the platform have been resolved. If you come to the complaints, it shows you the resolves complaints. So you do also, as a company, have all the rights to, if you feel your NTB is not satisfactorily resolved, you could direct contact the national focal points. If there are any delays, you can direct the AfCFTA NTB coordination unit. And really the whole point is because we understand in true business language that time is money. So every minute you spend when your NTB is not resolved, it's money that the company is losing. So we really try to resolve all NTBs as quickly as we can. And this is now at the AfCFTA, we're assisting the national focal points and the relevant stakeholders to resolve the NTBs. So that's that. So then how do we, before we get to the how do we also have a mobile app, which is a direct mirror of the website of this one. So you can download it, get on your App Store, on your Google Store, and get the AfCFTA NTB online mechanism. When you're at the border, whatever NTB you're registering, you submit it on your phone. The systems are linked. So when you submit it on the phone, it still gets, the process is the same. It will still also reflect on the website. So this tool is extremely important. And what we have realized as the NCU is that, most companies, or there was not as much awareness on this mechanism. So the plans are to undertake different awareness and raising and sensitization efforts in different countries, and that's an ongoing process. And what we realize is when we do have such interventions, more NTBs are registered, which shows that it's just a lack of maybe knowledge on the system. So this is that on the system, and I will quickly take you through, just very quickly, the e-tariff platform. So all these instruments that are operational instruments.
Masego?
Yeah.
Could we finalize it in 3 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we also have the e-tariff book. So it's all operational instruments can be accessed on our AfCFTA website. This is basically when a company wants to check the details of the product they want to trade, and you want to check issues on the duties applicable, all the tariffs applicable. So here you put the country in which you're exporting from and a country in which you are importing to, and the product. Once you do that, then it will give you all relevant information, necessary information regarding that product that you intend to trade. And the reason for that is it eliminates a lot of back and forth now where you're losing time to go to the relevant government ministries to get information that you would otherwise get on the website and otherwise save you time and in most cases unnecessary expenses while as you embark on your trade journey. So these are some of the tools that we do have. So I'll leave it here. Just go to the AfCFTA website for all operational instruments, and we'll be happy to assist and even beyond this webinar. Thank you very much, and back to you, Delia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Shunga Sambo and Ms. Ratabele Maika. Thank you very much for that rich and practical presentation. There has been so much important and practical information shared today. Even me, I learned a lot. And I'm sure it has sparked many questions and piqued our curiosity. So we'll now transition into a moderate discussion and audience Q&A. Participants are invited to submit questions in the chat. Please indicate your country and the agribusiness value chain you operate in. My colleague Lou will moderate this Q&A and will select questions to address directly with our keynote speakers. Thank you very much. Lou, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Odilia, and thank you for the speakers for this amazing presentation that I hope we could learn a lot from. Wendy, I see that you are already starting answering some questions in the chat, so I think that's super helpful. But I will read some of the questions that are not being that have not been answered yet. And also, I know we have a partner from a private partner that we work with in Ghana, Farming in Africa, our partner Fred, that also wanted to explain a little bit of his situation regarding the AfCFTA situation and some of the bottlenecks he's facing. So if he can come in and turn his camera on, I will give him the word. But in the meantime, there are a lot of questions that have been asked from partners. One of them is how to bridging the gap awareness to action. And they are asking specifically in regards to Liberia, where many MSMEs and agribusiness in the cocoa and livestock sector are unaware of specific procedural requirements. And our person wants to know, Mr. Olivier Taylor, regarding this gap, what standardized readiness module or toolkit can we adopt for capacity building to support the smallholders transition and be export ready? So is there such thing as we talk about this capacity building, is there some readiness modules?
I can come in?
Yeah, please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, we do recognize that really capacity building as well as awareness of what is happening and the opportunities that exist is really a challenge right now. But there are some developments that we are working on at the AfCFTA Secretariat, including the AfCFTA Academy and Masterclass. So actually, that is one area that we had planned to come up with some master classes on the Agri-Trade Action Plan, really giving those practical tools on how the MSMEs can really take advantage of the opportunities that exist, as well as these practical exercises, just one of the tools that Maseko took you through, but going through all the different practical tools that can be available to MSMEs, coming up with a sort of module on the agri-trade and how SMEs can really take advantage is really in the pipeline for us. And we hope to finalize some of this work this year so that people can have access to it online instead of just through other initiatives that we try to build capacity and awareness in physical meetings, etc. So that is one of the areas that we plan to focus on. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Thank you
maybe
so
just
much,
to,
Rosie. Yes, please,
yep.
Maseko.
And maybe just to add, in addition to the e-learning academy, the AfCFTA undertook a pilot initiative. We called it the Guided Trade Initiative, which was an exercise that was used to test the operational instruments of the AfCFTA. Through that, there was also a lot of awareness and just creating that awareness on the instrument. So the initiative was successful. It garnered over 39 state parties, which really tested the instruments. Now it has been phased out. There is still at conceptual stages. We're conceptualizing the AfCFTA sandbox program, which is now which will be piloted in some trade corridors. This is also to supplement or maybe to check the operational instruments further now on more like the practical side of things, to say, okay, at these corridors, what's the ease of trading under the AfCFTA agreement? The AfCFTA also has the AfCFTA private sector dialogues. This is where we bring the private sector into a room like this to have just dialogues where we discuss all things private sector. We've convened one last year on the margins of the G20, and it was a huge success. It was an opportunity for the private sector to really delve deeper into the issues, and all this with a view to now us as the Secretariat to see how best we could continue supporting. So there's more of such dialogues that are planned, and all these really to say we understand that the critical role that the private sector, the MSMEs in particular play, and therefore for the AfCFTA to be a success or to be fully operational, then the private sector needs to be brought on board. So all these different activities or different platforms just to create that awareness and to make sure that that MSMEs are not left behind, or if anything, that the ones leading the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Micah, for all the additional information. And I think you also mentioned much more of this opportunity for capacity building. And Wezi, the fact that you insisted also on the e-learning side, very interesting, as it was also a question that it should maybe be some opportunity there as well. We have a question from Mr. Andrew Betza from Mozambique, asking about the ginger value chain. You listed some kind of value chain that had been identified, and I assume, Mr. Andrew, you can also take the floor if you want to ask your question in person. But is there anything coming up for the ginger value chain?
Yes, practically, I think what I focused on was the value chains that we want to implement within the 2 years. So these are the value chains of focus right now. And unfortunately, ginger is not one of the value chains. I know there's been a lot of requests from member states to include other value chains, but we had to really say, what can we do within 2 years to show impact? And maybe the next phase of our action plan, the next 2 years, perhaps ginger will be one of them. But for now, ginger is not one of the value chains in the Agri-Trade Action Plan.
Thank you so much for this precision. And of course, it is well understood. And thank you, Mike, also for sharing your the email to give some further support to the private sector actors present here today for later on. You can all see it in the chat. And then maybe for a last question, I would give the word to Mr. Richard from DRC, as they want to ask for a further exploration on the opportunities for the maize value chain with the AfCFTA specifically. The question is not so poor. Could you maybe come in, Mr. Richard, to precise your question? Or do you want a generic introduction on the opportunities for the maize value chain? I cannot see you in the big group that we are. So you can put your hands up if you want me to unmute you. Otherwise, I can give it to the speakers to already maybe explore a little more the question of the... I see it now. You can take the floor, Mr. Richard. The sound.
Yeah, well,
Perfect.
Thank you, Lou, for the floor. My question is to know which opportunities are available for the maize value chain, because I understood Wezi talking about it, so I didn't catch very well what's opportunities according to maize value chain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that question. And maybe we can share more information via the emails that Maseko has shared in the chat. So can you please take note of those emails? But just very quickly, I'm just displaying the Agri-Trade Action Plan, which is very big. And I want to just highlight the maize value chain. So once we share the Agri-Trade Action Plan, you can see there we have really mapped out all the opportunities, the challenges, the barriers, and the areas where you can get involved in if you want to take advantage of this value chain in terms of trade. So that is the whole analysis of maize. All these slides really going into the different barriers, the different opportunities, and that you can explore further. So that's why I'm encouraging you to send us an email, and you can ask your question, and specifically we can share the information that you want to know about the maize value chain specifically for you to explore within DR Congo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wezi, for giving us an overview of the full Agri-Trade Action Plan. That is very interesting document, I think, for a lot of our guests today. I see that we are coming to, we have still a lot of questions in the chat. Micah, you want also to complete the answer?
No, actually, just to come back with more information. Yeah.
Yes,
so I'll let
please.
you finish this part.
No,
okay.
Please continue.
Okay. I think it's important to also mention some of the protocols that we have developed as key instruments. I know the Director Magong spoke about those, but there's also need for the audience, especially I could imagine most women and youth, that there's a protocol on women and youth that seeks to really address the, or maybe to help enable their trades flow in the continent. There's that protocol that deals with that, and there's the digital trade protocol and digital trade, which, although there's not a specific annex to agricultural trade per se, but it has very useful annexes on cross-border digital payments, which deals with issues on inclusivity, paying from the bank, Momo, using wallets to ensure that there's affordability and interoperability. There's also an annex that deals with emerging and advanced technologies. I mean, we're moving to in the fourth industrial revolution where now all things are technology. So this protocol has or maybe made provisions for issues that, for example, I could imagine as the agribusiness, you want a platform that will be able to predict the weather, to ensure that the market trends, you know which crop to plant when and how. So really what both protocols seek to, the gap they close is the digital gender divide. And I think if there's more time, then that could also be an opportunity for the audience to really interact with those key protocols, as I believe they're important for businesses and for us as we trade intra-continent. So thanks, Lou.
Thank you. Thank you for the important addition on on these points and giving even more resources to our participants. I see one last question that we will take before the closing. We are already over time, but I will give the opportunity to Mr. Kadongo to ask very briefly his question. Have a brief answer, and then we will close the session with closing speeches. Mr. Kadongo, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you yet. I'm not sure if you can open your microphone. Okay, I'm not sure if the connection allows for Mr. Makongo, so I will give it back to you, Odelia.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the participants and also to the keynote speakers for all your insightful discussions. Given the limited time, I will not attempt to summarize all the rich exchanges, but I hope you have found the discussion as insightful and inspiring as I have. Thank you so much. So on behalf of ABF and ACBF, we really want to extend our sincere appreciations to the AfCFTA Secretariat, BMZ, and our distinguished speakers, and also to the participants from SMEs, experts, and guests. So for the closing remarks and to conclude this excellent discussion, allow me to invite Mr. Mamadou Biteye, the Executive Secretary of African Capacity Building Foundation, and Ms. Lynn Feldkutter, the Head of Project at the Agribusiness Facility for Africa, to share their final remarks. Mr. Mamadou Biteye, you have the floor, please.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to join you from Harare, Zimbabwe.
I think there is some yeah.
Yeah,
okay now.
Sorry, there was some background noise. I cut it.
Yes.
Okay. No, fantastic. Thank you very much. Let me first recognize really Dr. Sotske Makong, Director of Coordination and Programs at the AfCFTA Secretariat, representing His Excellency, the Secretary General. Also, Mr. Ronald Mayer, Head of Division 210 at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. And of course, Ms. Lynn Feldkutter of GIZ, Head of Project at the Agribusiness Facility for Africa. But I also want to really recognize the distinguished speakers, partners, entrepreneurs, and all participants, ladies and gentlemen, as we say, all protocols observed. But allow me first really to express our sincere appreciation to our valued partners, namely the AfCFTA Secretariat, BMZ, and the Agribusiness Facility for Africa, ABF, for their collaborations and commitment in making this expert talk possible. I would also like to warmly thank our keynote speakers, specifically Mrs. Wethi Chunga Sambo and Mrs. Masego Retabile. Mike, I hope that I'm pronouncing the names correctly, for their insightful presentations, as well as all participants for their active engagement in today's discussion. I've seen the Q&A session has been really very insightful and very active, actually, so which demonstrates real interest in the questions being discussed today at this expert talk. So today's sessions has clearly highlighted that the African Continental Free Trade Area represents a historic opportunity for African MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, particularly in the agribusiness sector. This is the opportunity to expand markets, strengthen regional value chains, and contribute to inclusive economic growth across the continent. As we heard, realizing this potential will require a strong capacity, collaboration, and continued support for entrepreneurs and institutions alike. At the African Capacity Building Foundation, as the African Union's specialized agency for capacity building, we remain committed to strengthening the capabilities of MSMEs, public institutions, and other key stakeholders so that the AfCFTA can translate into real opportunities, jobs, and sustainable development across the continent. So, to our agribusiness entrepreneurs as well across the continent, we would like really to encourage you to seize the opportunities offered by the AfCFTA and position your enterprises to thrive in the emerging continental market. So in conclusion, and without really keeping you for too long, I just want to make a call. And the call is very simple. It's for us to continue working together to build a more integrated Africa where our entrepreneurs trade across borders, our value chains grow stronger, and our continent fully realizes its vast economic potential. So I thank you very much, and thank you again, Odilia, for the great work, and to all partners and to all participants, and also to our precious partners. So I thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Biteye. Thank you for your remarks. Now we will hear for the final words from Ms. Lynn Folketer, Head of Project at ABF, as she wrap up today's expert talk. Thank you very much. Ms. Folketer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Odilia. So, dear Mr. Biteye, Executive Secretary of African Capacity Building Foundation, Dr. Marcon, Director of Coordination and Programs, and of course, dear Mr. Meyer, from our German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. I would like to thank you very much being here with us today for the opening, but also for the closing remarks. And from my end, I would like to start further, and let me begin with by thanking Vesi for really for the excellent presentation, which walk us through the AfCFTA framework and help us better understand its priorities and the value chains at the center of the continental market. Many thanks also to Masego for presenting the operational tools and illustrating how each MSMEs participating today can contribute to making AfCFTA work in practice. I appreciate it very much. So these agribusiness facility expert talks, this is one of our series. And our aim is to share practical tools and knowledge for micro, small, and medium enterprises. So more importantly, they create a space for dialogue, what we have done today, and also partnership to help agribusinesses grow and become stronger suppliers, investors, employees, in climate resilient, and we supporting maize, cocoa, and livestock value chain. Let me highlight two key takeaways from today's discussion. So first, money moves, but knowledge stays. So investment will always follow opportunity. But lasting transformation comes from skills, knowledge, and institutional capacity that remain in the system. This is where where programs like us, ABF, aim to contribute. And secondly, and I borrow the words from Dr. Macron, but also from Mr. Meyer, markets cannot open if skills are not there. So AfCFTA provides a policy framework for a single African market, but businesses must be able to meet standards, scale production, and operate cross borders. Building these capacities is therefore essential. The AfCFTA opens significant opportunities. A single continental market means access to a larger customer base, fewer trade barriers, and more harmonized standards. This can make African agribusiness products more competitive and attract new investment across the sector. And at the same time, we recognize the challenges that many MSMEs face, from limited production capacity and compliance with standard to access to finance and skills. So addressing these constraints is essential if MSMEs are to benefit fully from AfCFTA. Our long objective is very clear. So to contribute to the emergence of one integrated African market for agribusiness by providing practical guidelines on AfCFTA and strengthening business capacities, we aim to support MSMEs in integrating into regional markets, meeting standards, accessing finance, and growing their businesses. So we sincerely thank our partner ACBF for co-organizing and make this session feasible and available for our MSMEs partners. And we encourage all private sector participants to continue sharing the bottlenecks they face. They know how to report and to get in contact with AfCFTA Secretary. Only through open dialogue we can identify practical solutions and turn policy into real opportunities. So thanks again. I would like for your participation, and we look forward to continuing this exchange and for further collaboration in the future. Thanks for being with us. Have a nice afternoon. And back to you, Odilia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Volketer. Thank you very much, Mr. Mamadou Biteye and Ms. Volketer, for your insightful closing remarks. So this ends our expert talk on the opportunities offered by AfCFTA to SMEs, MSMEs in agribusiness. We sincerely thank our VIP guests, Mr. Mamadou Biteye, Mr. Ronald Meyer, Ms. Dr. Chotechi Mapong, and Ms. Lynn Volketer. Thank you to Ms. Wenzi Shango-Sambo and Ms. Mazengo Maika, our keynote speakers. Thank you to my co-moderator, Lou Lefort. And we really want to thank our partners, the participants, for their engagement and contribution today. And we look forward to continue this important journey toward stronger regional trade, inclusive growth, and also sustainable development across Africa. Thank you very much, and we wish you a very pleasant day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for your attention.
You too. This was really encouraging.
Thank you so much.